Hello, everyone. I'm Neena Gopal. Welcome to Global Express. This is where we discuss developments in our backyard and beyond that have a direct impact on India and our immediate neighborhood. We've watched as Middle East arch rivals Iran and Israel have broken with years of shadow warfare and instead of using proxies, have directly turned their guns on each other, raining missiles and drones on each other's territory. In the case of Iran, Tehran unleashed over 300 missiles on Israel. Their ballistic long range missile capability was on display. And unlike Hamas's October 7th attack on Israel's settlements along the Gaza Strip, this time Israel seemed better prepared. Its short range Iron Dome, its medium range David Sling, its long range Arrow ballistic missiles were all deployed. It has a fifth generation long range missile too, I believe, the Rafale in its arsenal. So when Israel retaliated and attacked the Iranian city of Isfahan, highly sensitive because it has the Junis Air Base and, of course, the underground nuclear facility, Natanz, Israel also pulled out all the stops. So as we take stock of this whole new warfare, where countries rain cruise, ballistic, and hypersonic missiles at each other and send a swarm of drones that are slower and easier to shoot down, I think it's time to look at the way missile defenses change the way that battles are fought over land and sea. Just looking at the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and now the face off between these two nuclear powers, it begs the big question: what about India? Are we impregnable? Are we vulnerable? Do we have an equivalent of the Iron Dome, the David Sling, the Arrow missile? I mean, we live in an extremely hostile neighborhood. We have China snapping away at our heels, not just on the land border, but across all the countries that ring India. And as one of our guests on the show, Lt Gen PJS Pannu says, China has spy satellites monitoring us from space, hypersonic missiles. In other words, a bomb in space is what you called it. So we have a face-off with Pakistan, but do we have a defensive and an attack system? On our panel today are three distinguished guests, all three acknowledged experts on India's military and strategic defense. I'd like to welcome the highly decorated Lt General Dr. VK Saxena, former Director General of the Corps of Army Air Defense, a distinguished fellow at the Center for Joint Warfare Studies at Vivekananda Foundation, visiting fellow at the Center for Land and Welfare Studies. He's written 5 books. He writes regularly on air defense, aerospace, military communication, nuclear security, and defense procurement. Welcome, General Saxena.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'd also like to welcome Lt Gen PJS Pannu, also highly decorated. He is the former Deputy Chief of Integrated Defense Staff. He had the privilege of raising the Defense Space Agency, Defense Cyber Agency, and the Armed Forces Special Forces Division. He has a PhD in the Management and Indigenization of Defense. He's also DJ Infantry and General Officer Commanding of the 14th Corps in the highest battlefield in the world. Welcome, General Pannu.
Thank you. Thank you, Neena, very much.
And of course, Aditya Ramanathan, Research Fellow at the Takshashila Foundation. He heads the Advanced Military Technologies Program and Takshishila's work on outer space, on the role of space in strategic affairs, nuclear weapons policy, the role of technology in India's military transformation and India's maritime interests. Welcome, Aditya Ramanathan, and congratulations on recently becoming a father as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's wonderful to be with such distinguished guests.
Let's go directly to the heart of this discussion by asking you, General Saxena. You know, this face-to-face confrontational approach that Iran and Israel have adopted these last 2 weeks, which has slipped back into a proxy war, we don't know where it's going to lead. Have we in India learned from the Iran-Israel near war? I mean, our biggest adversary is China. Pakistan comes a close second. What kind of missile threat do we face from our adversaries at this current moment? Do China and Pakistan have a range of ballistic missiles aimed at Indian cities, on our military facilities, on our land and naval bases?
I think, Nina, you made a very right start by first defining the threat set as to what threats we face. Against that reference parameter only, we can address your question captioned in your talk, in your interview. Are we impregnable? Now, as you rightly said, China is, we are, we can choose our friends, but we cannot choose our neighbors. And we know
That's
very
right.
well, latest report from China says that a country with 550 active nuclear warhead, which are likely to go up to 1,000. The three vehicles of long range strike, both being the ballistic missiles, the cruise missiles, and the hypersonic weapons, China is a very, very strong power. We know that the DF or the Dongfeng range of missiles start from the low end of just 500 kilometers, that is DF1, and go as much as 14,000 plus kilometers. In this
Wow.
scam, ballistic missiles, it has spans the whole range from 500, 300, 400, 600 are the SRBMs for the short range ballistic missiles DF1, 11, 12, 15. Then you graduate to little higher ranges 1250, 2500, 2800, MRBM range of DF2, 3 and DF16, 21. Then we have higher ranges, one stage and two stage, intermediate range ballistic missiles, that is DF-25 as well as DF-26. And the
General
cherry,
Saxena, how long have they been in place? I mean, and where exactly are they placed?
they are placed in, majority of them are placed in the autonomous Tibet autonomous region and the places from where they can be effective not only against India but a larger part of, because we are not the only ones on their crossfire. They are also targeting many other places in the world. You know that China, we are not the only one number one enemy
Yeah.
of the, we have other places also, but adequate number of the total number of ICBMs with China are around 350 intercontinental
Wow.
ballistic missiles, and the total number of other missiles are 1350 as per the latest estimates. Now, this is one area only, that is ballistic missiles. These ballistic missiles can carry conventional warheads as well as nuclear warheads. Just to give you an example, the DF-25, innocent looking IRBM can carry 3 nuclear warheads. Or
My
a
God.
and CSS-10, the solid fuel ICBM can carry 1,000 kT of warhead. So that is a huge quantum of warhead that they can carry. More importantly than this is the warhead carrying capability, including hypersonic warheads. Now, you know that the Chinese hypersonic program started way back in 2005 and 6, but started coming to shape in the media attention from 2016-17. And from
Oh,
then
I
on,
see.
17, 18, 19, 20, and 21, they have launched a hypersonic aircraft. We all know Starry Sky 2. They have also launched hypersonic cruise missiles, DF-8, D-18, 1S, 2S, and 3S. And also latest, in February 2023, they launched and August 21, for the first time, they launched a hypersonic glide vehicle on a long march rocket, which carried the, if you remember, it carried the the Chang 5 lunar probe.
Yeah.
They also launched, they carried, went over the South Pole and launched at the end of the flight an air-to-air missile. So what I'm trying to bring out from my talk is that this ballistic missile threat is a grown, developed, and not only this, it is only the delivery means, the command and control structure, the communication, the connectivity, hierarchy, and the protocols are also in place. This is one vertical. Second vertical of Chinese threat is the cruise missiles. You know, cruise
Mm.
missiles, you all know they're all the way powered missiles. They'll remain low, avoid radar detection. They can be both subsonic, supersonic, and also hypersonic. So the Chinese DH-10.
Would you be able to explain to the average viewer who's not really au
I,
fait with these details what you mean by supersonic and subsonic?
The one which moves below the speed of sound is subsonic. The one which moves higher than the speed of sound is supersonic. And the one which crosses the sound barrier by 5 times, Mach 5 or more, is called
Hmm.
hypersonic.
Okay.
Hypersonic weapons have the typical capability of going so fast that they overwhelm the decision cycle of detect, de- intercept, and kill of the air defense system, conventional air defense system. They are unpredictable. They can keep large areas of defender under threat at the same time. So China is also a good power, is a strong power in cruise missile. They have recently, you remember February 2020, there was a standoff in the South China Sea. They sent a
Yes.
task force with a YG-21 hypersonic cruise missile with a range of 333 kilometers. So
My
that
God.
idea of the cruise missile. And the third, this whole trio of ballistic missiles, conventional and special warheads, cruise missiles, and hypersonic weapons, both hypersonic cruise missiles and hypersonic glide vehicles are the one which they possess. This is capability. Intent is a different thing. When the
Yeah,
push
yeah.
when the push come to the shove, we can factor that this is the threat which is looming from on our north and northeastern border.
Hmm.
Now,
That's very interesting.
coming
Is there
to
a spin-off? I have a spin-off from this question, which is I mean, what level of defense preparedness do we have in place? I mean,
yes,
I'd like you and General Pannu also to come in on this,
I'll
and
just
Aditya.
let me just complete the threat frame by talking to our lesser of the two adversaries, which is
Yeah, yeah.
Pakistan is on a
Pakistan.
lower end of the spectrum. Most of their missiles are short-range ballistic missile. You know the Hutch series of missile, 80, 200, 250. Their highest range missile is Shaheen 2, 2750 kilometers. But what is of importance in the Pakistani threat is their cruise missile, which are being developed fast. Land attack cruise missile, which is called Babar 1 and Babar 2. Air launch cruise missile, which is called the Rad, and the quick reaction short range missile, which can quickly launch a tactical nuclear warhead. They are the three which require notice. Now,
Are these
even
indigenous, General Saxena? Are these indigenous, or
they're,
have they got help from somebody?
they're hybrid. They're hybrid. They call it indigenous, but they're not indigenous. This is
Hmm.
bag borrow steel technology from various
Yeah,
places, and also
North
there
Korea,
their ironclad brother from the
China.
always helping them out with these three types of missiles. Now, this is the type of the threat frame which we feel. So, if we feel that our borders, our gut, our interior, now ballistic missiles, strategic weapons do not hit just small targets here and there. They hit huge targets. What are those things which
Oh,
we're talking about? What is it that we are vulnerable about, for which we can say, are we impregnable or not? Our national command post. That means in the time
hmm.
of war, the command post which will come into being to conduct both the nuclear war is the national command post. Our seat of power, our nuclear assets in terms of nuclear storage, delivery means, command and control setup, our oil refineries, our Jamnagar, okay,
No,
our critical
yeah,
core infrastructure. You are aware that our government has indicated 7 core structures. What are our 7 core infrastructures? Telecommunication, power, banking and finance, transportation, strategic entities, government enterprises, and healthcare. What are the vulnerabilities?
yeah.
Airports, hospitals, rail and road links, and our war waging potential. These are at
Hmm.
risk. These are it. When the push come to the shove, and when the threat is expected, these strategic vulnerabilities need to be protected. That is where
That's
it,
that's very unnerving.
yes, that is
It
where
really
you ask,
makes my hair stand on end.
yeah,
Yeah,
that is
General
where
Pannu, would you like to come in and contribute to this? What level of defense preparedness do we have? I mean, that would actually be the corollary to this.
Uh,
What kind of preparedness do we have?
Neena, General Saxena has been ahead of the air defense, and it was his core business to protect our skies and our space. from any vertical attack, which is missiles. And he's spoken about the ballistic missile defense and the threat coming from Pakistan and China. As far as India is concerned, no country, including India, is ever fully prepared because the technological cycle is ever evolving. Whatever defense system you create, there is always going to be a disruption in technology. When you're talking about any missile program which is in development, you find that every day, every week, every month, year after year, you find newer and newer technologies put to test. As the ranges increase, the lethality and the accuracy also matters a lot. Earlier, of course, there was a concentration that you should be able to strike an enemy target where the CEP, the center error of probability, that is the accuracy, was always a question. You could reach so many thousands of kilometers or so many 100 kilometers, but yet miss the target. But what is happening is that in technology, the way our space is providing the ISR, the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, and keeping every target, every place of interest absolutely clear, and every day a strategy would unfold because a target list gets revised every day. And during the active hostilities, you can say that the target lists should get revised every minute if it is possible. A lot of technology has come into observation, surveillance, and reconnaissance, into seeing where the probable targets are, and therefore deception comes into play. If you have to defend yourself, then there are two ways of doing it. One is active defense and one is passive defense. Active defense obviously means that you are making sure that your target or the ability or the capacity of the adversary to hit you becomes inconsequential because you can target it. If you get the plume of the enemy, plume is from where you can actually detect from the space where the missile is going to take off or has taken off. Then plume detection itself becomes one big ability for a ballistic missile defense to counter the future flight paths. Even if it goes into the space and re-enters, there are more conventional technologies through radars and through extrapolation to know what the flight and how the trajectory is shaping up and where it is likely to hit. But all this has undergone a change with the hypersonic glide vehicle, as General Saxena was talking about. Even if you know that the adversary has fired a missile, you still do not know because it goes into the space and you do not know when it is going to get into the orbit or it is going to deorbit. And that is exactly what you were talking about of my article in Hindustan Times, that actually there is a possibility of a missile taking an orbit and or a part orbit, getting into a deorbit mode and making a re-entry and then getting into a glide. Now, if you get into a glide in a typical hypersonic glide vehicle, it is very difficult for two reasons to detect from where the threat is coming, because the glide itself changes the direction very rapidly at a speed of 5 Mach and above, say, hypothetically, if it is 10 Mach to 15 Mach, then electronically, it becomes very difficult for the radars to even figure out the extrapolation of the direction and the angle. And if the speed and the trajectory is unpredictable, then you do not know where exactly it is going to hit.
Oh my.
While the CEP, that is the accuracy being what it is, the space can finally bring to bear that same missile targeting to the accuracy of a few meters. And if the area that it can kill or neutralize is huge, because after all, it depends on the capacity of the warhead, whether it is conventional or it is carrying a weapon of mass destruction. Beyond that, today we are also talking about a live threat of the EMP. That is, it will not kill, but it will make sure all the electronic circuits are broken. And that kind of a pulverization would completely make the future technological prowess of a nation coming down, tumbling to nothing. So as a
Isn't this
result,
what Israel? Isn't this what Israel did at that air base in Isfahan? Right? I mean,
well,
with the
whether
rampage or something.
yeah. So what happens is, Neena, these days, you do one thing and you announce another thing. You don't announce the same thing that you do. So there
Oh,
is one layer of what you do and another layer of information warfare and the deception. Like you're talking about deepfakes. Well, there are going to be deepfakes which are going to be live deepfakes of what exactly is happening. Even your spoofing of GPS would actually completely confuse as to where the aircraft is moving and where exactly it is actually on ground. So therefore,
so
it becomes very difficult to gauge the intention to the actual threat, how it manifested and how it will manifest.
yeah. So before I come to you, Aditya, can I just go back to General Saxena and ask him, General Saxena, could you elaborate on this? I mean, it's quite fascinating that what General Pannu has just said. How good is India at deciphering the deep fake and the real thing?
Yeah, this
And
morning
what would our
it.
reaction time be to in
Yeah,
our reaction time? I mean, would it be
yeah. This morning, if you
beyond react?
This morning, if you heard the Vantage by Palki, she was talking about the huge reaction or the huge impact of deepfake in elections. That is one. But I am talking of what General just brought about is the deepfake of information warfare. That means
Hmm.
your information about your missile launch, its trajectory, its targeting, where it is targeting, all that can be defaked. And what is
Oh,
most critical with the journalist bringing out is the defense against hypersonic weapons. That is the one which was talking about. That you need to have a global look-see capability for that. In the target area, you have to have a global capability all over in the target area. Then your weapons, which necessarily have to be the directed energy weapons, like the general talked about, the EMP pulse, are the ones which will do instantaneous catastrophic destruction. There is no way.
ah,
There is no way that a conventional air defense weapons will do interception, will do attack, will do tracking of the target. No way. Before that, the target is on you. But more important question that you are asking was, what is our preparation of integrated ballistic missile development program of India? Because that brings up
yes,
to now, are we impregnable or not? I
yeah,
am I am so proud to tell you that in the year 2000, I was serving in the MO Directorate as a Colonel Saab, and I got the opportunity to get involved in the integrated ballistic missile development program and worked with my so-called mentor, Dr. VK Saraswat, who now is in the Niti Aayog, the one of the Prithvi fame. I can just very simply tell you that from 2000 till 2024, it has been a journey of successes and failures. I will not say dashing success, sterling success, nothing like that. Still,
yeah,
and failures. We aimed, first of all, the big decision was announced whether you want the system from abroad. Russia was selling us NT 2500. US was coming up with MIM 404 Patriot and also was talking THAAD but not offered, and so on. The decision was taken, whatever it may come, we will develop our indigenous program called Program AD that time, because to keep it secret, in two phases, phase one and phase two. Phase one till 2012, phase two to 2016. Phase one to cater for ballistic missile shield for missiles ranged up to 2,000 kilometers, and phase two from 2,000 to 5,000 kilometers. I am again very proud to tell you, most of this work is a done work. Done work.
wow, that's
Far,
fantastic.
but far from done. At the same way, I will say,
But we're
for
not far from done. Yeah,
a lot of work yet to be done, because this is nothing perfect in the ballistic missile defense system. We have developed exo-atmospheric interceptors in terms of PAD, Prithvi Air Defense, and PDV, Prithvi Design Vehicle, 50 to 80 kilometers, and AAD, Army Air Defense, 30 kilometers. And in phase two, we are also developing 81, 82. Its status is classified, I cannot tell here. But also the operationalization is at the present moment at some place. I cannot tell you, but the operationalization of BMD in Program AD is up on its 2 feet. I can say that much in an open audience, nothing more than that. Another very big
So
thing.
there is a protective shield,
Yes.
and we do have, a reaction time.
Yes.
If there is an attack, I mean that it will go into effect. Could
But
could
far
sorry?
from space, far from space-based defense, what the general was hinting, is a lot of uncharted ground, uncharted areas to be captured, to be done. This is conventional ballistic missile defense in 2 phases. And also Russia is holding a promise. You are aware, S-400 missile system, 5.4 billion in 2018.
Yes.
One regiment has 160 missiles. One regiment has got 2 GW battery, guided weapon battery. Each has got 4 launchers. Each has got 5 missiles. Therefore, total of 160 missiles per regiment. But unfortunately, only 3 regiments have come out of 5. Other 2, when they will come, open source are talking about 2014, 24, 26, whatever. This is also an anti-ballistic missile defense system. And the third anti-ballistic missile defense capability or ballistic missile defense capability we have got in Barak 8 system, which is a naval system which has got the Barak 8.
Yeah, I was reading about that.
AIA and DRDO venture. It has got the capability to bring down the cruise missile. So those are the capabilities which we are having today, but far from impregnable. I will not risk that word to say impregnable. No, it is impregnable.
Yeah. In fact, I like the word Barak because it means lightning in Hebrew, I believe.
Yes.
It's a lovely word.
Yes.
So I'd like to come to you, Aditya, and so could you tell us? I mean, there's a lot of jargon that's been thrown at me, multi-domain warfare. I don't understand any of that. But I wanted to figure out this, the fact that Russia has been offering us such advanced technology. Is that a shift? Do you see a shift in the way that the US and France and the UK even are now when it comes to dealing with India and sharing technology, which India is very good at indigenizing and making it, so good, as in the BrahMos missile, for example, which is basically an amalgam of 2 words, Brahmaputra and Moskova. Which I found quite fascinating. Now we've sold the first of these missiles to the Philippines. Do you see a strategic kind of shift where India is concerned in the world?
So yeah, sure. Thanks. If you're asking about general defense cooperation, trying to, developing, for example, UCAVs or long-range missiles, or at least cruise missiles, I think there's room for optimism there that these countries are now willing to share something with India and do some kind of co-development, especially if there is especially if they see commercial interest in it. So, for example, if you can produce not just for the Indian market, but for export to other countries in the Indo-Pacific. As far as ballistic missile defense is concerned, I think that's we're not going to see much tech sharing in there. That's something that countries hold to themselves, and really you're going to have to develop indigenously in India.
Yeah. Then could you tell us a little bit about the BrahMos missile then? I mean, that definitely benefits both Russia and India, the sale of it. Or is it just solely India that cashes in?
No. From what I understand of BrahMos, both countries benefit from it. But I mean, look, it's any such deal with a Western power is going to be different because it's going to be a commercial deal. You're going to have a commercial company, a company basically looking to make some money off of it, right? So even if they're selling to the Indian market, or they're doing co-production and selling elsewhere, they're going to want some returns on their investment. So it might be a slightly different sort of deal. And just on the point of of whether India's missile defenses are impregnable, I think both the generals have basically explained it very clearly. I don't think impregnability is necessarily what we are going for, or like expect.
What are we going for?
So, I mean, look, it's a moving target, right? I mean, because technology keeps evolving and the capabilities of your adversaries keep evolving. And, I think there are two different types of missile defenses here that we are talking about, which are connected. There's an overlap, but they are different, which is nuclear and conventional. And, for nuclear, you do accept some amount of mutual vulnerability. Now, the way India's traditionally approached this is we should be able to survive an initial strike and be able to strike back and inflict unacceptable damage on an adversary with nuclear weapons. Now, of course, as General Saxena has pointed out, there's all sorts of changes that have happened. So we've had hypersonic glide missiles, for example, that are meant to, for example, potentially hit your command and control nodes. That's your leadership targets and so on. That's really dangerous. There's also simply the fact that China's nuclear arsenal is burgeoning, right? So we are potentially looking at something like 1,000 delivery systems, 1,000 nukes in the next few years, maybe the next decade. Over the last few years, we discovered 3 silo fields in the deserts in Western China. These are most likely to be, filled with TF-41s, which are solid fuel missiles, which simply means that they can be launched at a moment's notice. India is not going to be able to defend against every single one of those missiles. To be clear, most of this Chinese nuclear arsenal is really pointed at the US, but it can, it's fungible. It can be pointed at in the target.
That's very interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
So yeah, I mean, your idea is not to be able to stop everything. Your idea is to be able to stop some missiles in some areas, especially around command and control nodes, leadership, and so on, and really then be able to still inflict unacceptable damage on the adversary. The other complicating factors here is that we're all aware of precision-guided munitions and so on. I think General Pannu touched on this. But I think what's less appreciated is that phenomena has also affects nuclear weapons. So it also means nuclear weapons are a lot more, potentially a lot more precise than they were 20 or 30 years back. And so what those nuclear weapons can be used for can change. And so that means India has to think about the actual vulnerability of its own nuclear forces in the event of a first strike against them. And those are the sort of broad challenges with the nuclear forces. Conventional it's more murky because what we're seeing is some major technological developments, and these always happen. Back in 1932, the Tory politician Stanley Baldwin declared, there's this famous speech in which he said, "The bomber will always get through." He was wrong, right? I mean, because technology evolved. You had radar, you had radar that could track bombers. You had fighters, you had anti-aircraft weapons, and so on. So there were countermeasures.
It was a much simpler world.
Sorry, what?
I said it was a much simpler world. The world was
yeah,
simpler.
I'm not sure I buy that. That was a simpler word.
When you watch more war movies from that time,
they're
it's much
fairly
more
complicated politics. The fact is, bombers got through.
General Pannu and General Saxena, both of you could come in. I was actually also reading up on this medium-range surface-to-air missile, which is being developed jointly. This is why I talked about sharing technology. Being developed jointly by the Defense Research and Development Organization, DRDO, as well as alongside the Israel aerospace industries. And that does show a level of cooperation between two countries. It's deployed in our fighter aircraft. It's got, deployed during flight tests. Apparently, and I found this very interesting, it had successfully intercepted a moving aerial target while moving at the speed of Mach 2. So, and you also brought up Barak 8, so could you tell us a little bit about that, both of you?
It is a very small word. It's a very small word, Neena. Again, when this Barak 8 thing was going on, I was in the procurement cycle. I was a brigadier at that time in my directorate and got involved in the JV between DRDO and the IAI. The idea was that time we were looking at, air defense firearm with the one, air defense was 3 verticals: sensors, firearm, and the battle management and control. Sensors, of course, look at the threat and prioritize, detect, and then designate the target. The sensors, the job is done, then come the interceptor, which kill, and the battle management and control system manages this whole thing. So when you talk of interceptor, the air defense has a firearm. This firearm is a seamless arm which extends from a few kilometers of towed and self-propelled air defense guns up to 100 kilometers and more.
Wow.
This is the firearm. It has the guns, which is 2 to 3 kilo, 4 kilometers. Then it has the man-portable air defense weapon system, about 4 to 6 kilometers. Then it has the short-range surface-to-air missile system, which is about 20, 30 kilometers. Then it has medium-range surface-to-air missile, which is 42 to 70 kilometers and up to 100 kilometers. So in this end of the firearm, we were developing manpad. We were having Russian manpad. The QR, the short-range surface-to-air missile gap was filled by Akash weapon system, which again, I don't want to be sounding too much me. I inducted it. I had the honor to induct it in the Indian Army on 5th May 2015. And
Wow.
this one medium-range surface-to-air missile was, that time DRDO was looking at technology transfer. Initially, AI was played, I will not say dirty, but they were not coming up. They were giving us very low quality work of making fins and bodies and outer. We forced on them to give us quality work in terms of autopilot, in terms of warhead carrying carriage, etc., etc. And ultimately, this whole game took off of medium-range surface-to-air missile system, which is Barak 8 for the Army called MRSAM, for the Air Force called MRSAM, and the version for the Navy called LRSAM of ranges more than 100 kilometers. It is a system which is basically has three verticals. It has a long-range surveillance radar, long-range LSR or LRSR, long-range surveillance radar. It catches the target. Thereafter, it is given to the multifunction radar, which tracks the target. And thereafter, basically, it is given the missiles take off. The radar guides the missile to the target, and at end game, when the target is closer, the active radar on the missile takes over and goes in for the kill. That is the whole game of the MRSAM. The MRSAM battery already inducted in the Indian Army, doing training in the Army ID College today. And the naval thing you already talked about, Air Force also ahead of the Army in the induction of MRSAM. So MRSAM is our backbone in medium-range surface-to-air missile system. But unfortunately, it is not a ballistic missile defense system. It is a pure and simple air defense system for taking on the conventional air threat of strike aircraft, cruise missiles, anti-radiation missiles, guided rockets and bombs, etc., etc. Ballistic missile defense system are basically Program AD, S-400, and Barak 8 of Navy.
That's fantastically interesting. General Pannu, if I could come to you. Russia has been the primary source of, of our defense equipment. They've been, this heritage issue where they have backed us, and all the way. Have things changed? I mean, we're getting closer to Israel, and do you see, more help coming in from the US vis-a-vis its Patriot missiles, which they have updated and made quite, lethal, much more lethal than they used than this generation Patriot missiles. Could you tell us something about that? About what we, without tipping off the enemy, what does our future look like?
Neena, well, the geopolitics of the world has undergone a change and is rapidly transforming. Today, when we speak about our own adversaries, we also need to understand the clubbing of our adversaries. And more so in last 2 years, I think the clubbing of adversaries, what I was talking about, the geopolitics and the alliances shall dictate how the technology would move. Today, as we talk about how certain groupings are shaping up, we will then start talking about how the same clubbing will make the industrial defense, industrial complexes also come together. Because after all, today, when you look at Ukraine, Russia, it is the defense industrial complex or the military industrial complex of number of countries which start contributing immediately. And there is warfare is a business, but there is also business in warfare. As a result, what happens is that the money flow, the technology flow, and the geopolitics and how the leaders are interplaying with one another matters a lot. How the Russian treatment towards Indian has still remained intact is because India still continues to maintain strategic autonomy. India understands that it should not really get into the crosshairs of a competition between superpowers. As a result, over a period of time, you realize that there are a lot of transfer of technology problems. There are always international trade boundaries which you cannot cross for the simple reason that these have been built by the lobbyists and those who are into the business of warfare. So as a result, you have to look at the overall sum that will be gainful for you on a given day. So today in the UNSC, the Russians and the Americans have had a big spat over how the Outer Space Treaty, which actually bans the use of space for weapons, which actually means weapons of mass destruction. So today they've had a major difference of opinion. And as a result, the Chinese very quietly have been looking at how to use space for weaponization without declaring anything. Because you don't declare anything, it's very difficult unless your space situational awareness is that good that you can inspect every satellite functioning and every satellite supporting the war on ground. So as a result today, if a lot of Soviet era or Soviet vintage equipment is there in India, at that time, the Soviet was today not the same Soviet. It is only part of that Soviet, which is Russia. So certain technology will still continue to flow, even whether it is Russia or not Russia. And certain technology, which is Russia to India, is already in the pipeline. At the end of the day, it is the India's interest which would dictate from where we get what. And it is the commonality of the interests that will dictate who would give us what. But certainly there is a shift which is taking place, which is Quad-based, pro-West. And I think that is a very, very gradual shift which is taking place. It all depends on how the trade of technology and business will take place between these two countries, because America and India always had a buyer-seller relationship and not the overall net gain in the capability development. But today, India is looking at Atmanirbharta, which is indigenization, where it is talking about capability development rather than having a buyer-seller relationship where only the money speaks. So I think that change has to happen. If there is a shift which is going to happen elsewhere, so from Soviet to Russia, and this Soviet and Russia not being the same thing is something that I can talk about. And General Saxena knows that how much equipment has come from where and why it is coming or not coming, what has dried up and what is not likely to dry up. In fact, in Ukraine itself, Ukraine was a larger part of the industrial complex, military industrial complex of the Soviet Union, and all gone to the West, which goes into the advantage that it has gone into the Western kitty. Now, if it comes back from the Western cycling or recycling of technology, I do not know. So at the end of it, we have to make sure that our inventory is neat, dependable, and it does not let us down during the actual hot war situation where the spares and the ammunition and all this supply chain starts blocking us into limiting our stamina of warfighting. So every country has to make sure that the stamina of warfighting is made in a manner so that your dependency is not with those who will completely choke you of the resources that they give you today.
That's a very good point, actually. That's true. Aditya, if I could bring you in, missile defenses were not talked about, 20 years ago. What has changed? Why has it gained so much salience today? What is the difference between then and now?
Sure. Sorry, I got cut off earlier. The short answer is basically changing political and technological context, what General Pannu pointed out were rapidly changing geopolitical contexts. In 1972, the US and Soviet Union signed an anti-ballistic missile treaty. And the idea was basically, our ballistic missile defenses don't really work all that well. So let's just focus on our offensive systems. And, this basically causes a lot of instability because, missile defenses are not necessarily peaceful, right? Because if you imagine two people with identical swords and are equally good at using them, there's some amount of stability because both of them are vulnerable. But if one of them suddenly gets a shield, that changes the game. All right. So the idea was, look, our shields don't really work all that well. So let's just put them aside and just focus on our offensive systems. Now, in 2002, the US actually withdrew from that treaty. This came right after 9/11, and they really used 9/11 to sort of gain the political capital necessary to withdraw from that treaty. And the Americans started investing heavily in ballistic missile defense. And today, the Americans have by far the most sophisticated ballistic missile defenses in the world. What they have are something called ground-based mid-course defenses, which are based in two staging areas in California and Alaska. And these can actually intercept ballistic missiles of the highest range, right? So say a Hwasong 15 comes from North Korea. So basically a ballistic missile has three stages broadly. There's a boost phase, when its rockets are firing. There's a mid-course phase where it's moving at a relatively flat trajectory, and a terminal phase where it returns back to Earth. Technically, intercepting missile at the ground during the boost phase when it's just taking off is the easiest because it's really slow and so on. The problem is that these missiles are often launched from far inland and so on, so you can't really intercept them at that stage. You could potentially intercept them when they're in their mid-course phase. Now, with a long-range missile, like an ICBM, that basically means when they're in space. And then, when they re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, that's the terminal phase. Now, terminal phase, they are at well over hypersonic velocities. And so it's very difficult, especially with ICBMs, to target them. With some of the shorter range missiles, it's easier. So basically you do mid-course interception, right? Now, that's sort of where everybody else would like to get to, including India. We're not there yet. Of course, General Saxena might have more details about this than I understand. So, I mean, that's where we would like to get to. That's really in turn caused a sort of competition among other countries, right? So China is developing its own ballistic missile defense systems. Now, that cannot be unnoticed by India, right? And so one of the things India has done is developed missiles like the Agni 5 that are capable of unnerving, carrying.
Yes, I was actually going to ask about Agni. Yeah.
So right, so like so multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles, and the idea of these is you can trade off some amount of yield for basically being able to penetrate through ballistic missile defenses. Basically because you present a lot of targets. There are lots of other tricks that ballistic missiles use. They use decoys, they use chaff, they use mylar balloons. In the microgravity environment of space, where there's no atmosphere as well, it's impossible to differentiate between a mylar balloon and a warhead, right? With radars. So, there are lots of ways in which basically countries have gotten really good at basically trying to confuse enemies' sensors, whether on the ground or in space. And so that's broadly something that India is also doing. So what we're seeing is really a sort of, it's not quite an arms race, it's an arms crawl or an arms jog, if you will, at this stage. Missile defenses are definitely part of what has created that. The other is simply that the threat vectors, to use jargon, basically the types of weapons you can use or platforms you can use have changed in conventional warfare. So you have a lot more cruise missiles. Cruise missiles are a lot cheaper than they used to be. I mean, cruise missiles basically are most cruise missiles basically use jet engines. They're sort of like little airplanes. I'm just simplifying, but that's what they are. And they can, like General Saxena says, they can fly low, evade radar, and so on. So you have much cheaper cruise missiles. You have drones, and you sort of have this democratization of precision, right? What I mean by that is, for example, in September 2019, There's this attack using drones or cruise missiles on two oil fields in Saudi Arabia, which apparently took out something like 6% of global output. Right? And these were supposedly launched by the Houthis, but really they're probably done with Iranian assistance. And in January 2020, just a few months later, after the Americans killed Qasem Soleimani, the Iranians launched 12 ballistic missiles, short-range ballistic missiles against two different American bases in Iraq. And they apparently hit everything that they intended to hit. I mean, these are very clear examples of how, precision has just become very common. It was not so 30 years back. So all of this really means that you have these new threats emerging, and you have to figure out ways of defending against them, just for conventional warfare. Also, as General Saxena mentioned, you have a lot more cruise missiles that are meant to target ships. All right, so anti-ship cruise missiles, they become supersonic. Even the BrahMos is supersonic. You also have hypersonic missiles. Now, ships have all sorts of ways of trying to defend against them. You have basically missiles. You also have what are called closing weapon systems, which are basically rapid firing guns, basically Gatling cannons that are meant to intercept these missiles. All of these are, they're part of the sort of competition that goes on between states. And what we're seeing is that basically the threats from missiles are getting more complex and more stark. And missile defenses in all of these cases are sort of struggling to catch up. So we're seeing very different circumstances there. And that's why I think.
So if I can just bring General Saxena in, what slot do you put the Agni Prime ballistic missile that was launched, a few weeks ago, and this, it says it had multiple warheads, and there is even a smaller, lighter Agni Prime. Is that defense or attack?
It is basically the Agni series of missile and offensive capability. If you look at 23rd April, I think yesterday yes, they have a new version of a medium range ballistic missile, which open source says is not a Agni series. Now, what does it mean? It means what Aditya was just mentioning. This technology today of precision, number one. Number two, the capability of, he was talking about MIRV. When the missile re-enters the space, it has three options. Either it launches a unitary warhead onto the target, one warhead, or it launches multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles. That means each of them will go and hit a target. Now, third version has already come in. It is called MARV. This multiple independently targeted re-entry vehicles need not be fixed to the target. They are maneuverable. You can maneuver them even after re-entry, and you can get on to the targets of choice and opportunity at that time when your speed is tremendous, your chances of hit are minimal. Now, that is the type of thing which is happening. Another one which has taken place on 19th April, it is called the Indigenous Cruise Missile Technology, ICMT. It is now a latest cruise. You're talking about BrahMos. BrahMos is, yes, of course, BrahMos is there, is extended range is there, its nuclear version, capable version is there, hypersonic. A new strand is getting developed, which is called the indigenous cruise missile technology. We are developing an indigenous cruise missile independent of the BrahMos vertical, which gets into the technology domain. Now, all your discussion of this show will remain incomplete if we do not say impregnable or pregnable. I will leave it to your judgment. I will want to say, what is it that we require to do as
exactly.
a country?
That was going to be my question. What do we need?
Yeah, now on, I have four suggestions for the stakeholders, decision makers, big people. First of all, and this is based on my humble experience over last 40 years. First is the foremost capability today is to build quantum. We are talking about, we have only three verticals. We have program AD, which is a ballistic missile defense system. It has got two phases, phase one, phase two. We have certain capability in S-400 and certain capability in Barak 8. But look at the ways and we look at the national vulnerabilities. There are far too many. And even if you take into account that a large swath of area gets covered when these area air defense weapons get deployed, you still require a huge quantum. So build quantum is my first requirement. I do not want to openly say here in the public domain how much we have got, what are the void, but I can say that when I'm saying build quantum, I mean build quantum. Number one. Number two, reduce the voids. Now, you think only national command posts or nuclear assets are worth protecting? What about a nation's war-waging potential? What about the nation's strategic oil reserves? What about the nation's capability to sustain core infrastructure? Tomorrow, our banking sector falls, or our critical infrastructure, or our airfield become dysfunctional. How will we stage war? Therefore, reduce the voids. Third factor which I've noticed with DRDO over large number. DRDO is good in technology, keeps making something, fails, again gets up, again makes, fails, again gets up. But once it makes something, it takes a very long cycle to operationalize. What do I say operationalize? Operationalize means you are a scientist, you have made a missile. But I am a firer, I am a user, I am a army guy, I am a Air Force naval guy. I want to press the trigger and I want to know how good it is to destroy matter. It is called operationalization. The ballistic missile defense force need to be operationalized into strategic forces command, which Gen Pannu had been on the helm of that. Operationalization is rather slow in our country. We need to operationalize at a much, much faster pace. Like today, the missile is developed, how fast it becomes operational. Like this, if you read 23rd March, 23rd April launch, it says that user-related technologies were validated. Means user fired it. User fired it. It's important. It is that did the scientist press the button or the user press the button? That is most important. It's called operation. We need to break the operationalization cycle. It is far too long. And finally, we must practice the NC hierarchy. What is NC hierarchy? Everybody knows we have a national command authority, we have a political council, we have an executive council, and then we have our nuclear assets, we have the command and control. I do not want to divulge it, classified data, but these need to be practiced off and on in terms of getting used to who will do what are the, I am sure a lesser mortal like me may not know what exactly is happening on this practice today, but it is my humble feeling that it needs to be practiced over and over again so that nothing comes as a surprise. Remember, Aditya was talking about punitive destruction. We need not bother about massive destruction cause an acceptable damage. We need to bother about making or building a credible nuclear deterrent. If we build that deterrent, which deters you to fire, my first aim and the last aim is that you are not firing at me. You know that I will be able to withstand your strike. I will have residual capability to strike, and I will strike you so hard as to cause you unacceptable damage. That is why the first point of our nuclear strategy is not strike. First point is India wants to build a credible nuclear deterrent. So I am saying that these are the four verticals which to my small way of thinking needs to be a way ahead.
No, General, this is fantastic. It's really beautifully put. General Pannu, do you want to come in and, praise your colleague? I do.
Well, General Saxena said something which is absolutely in place of how things should be. The unfortunate part in warfare is that in Second World War, it gradually shaped into what it became. And ultimately, it became unstoppable till the time a nuclear bomb was dropped in Japan. And that was the end of Second World War, which was a huge deterrence through demonstration. That here and after, if you do not stop, then this will continue to happen because 2 bombs were dropped. In the first
So you're talking about Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Why 2 bombs were dropped was, first was a technological demonstration that, hey, stop. The second one is also going to come. So they knew that the second one came, the third and the fourth, and the others will come. As a result, today, we have built, not India, of course, we can talk in theory, that every country looks for a second strike capability. Should you and must you survive the first strike, you should be able to be survived with the capability that would strike back to counter the first strike, which is a deterrence of the kind General Saxena is talking about, and India possesses it. Second thing is, when you're talking about the missile defense, as far as strategy is concerned, the deterrence can only be achieved through demonstration. And if there is no war, then it is the technological demonstration which happens. In 2019, India actually operationalized its Prithvi to shoot out its own low Earth orbit satellite, which is basically to tell you that, listen, we have that kind of a capability that in the skies or in the space, we will be able to accurately hit an adversarial target, which was a technological deterrence that here and after we possess the capability, you dare not do anything, because that is the kind of precision that our missile technology in the ballistic missile defense has been able to demonstrate and publicize. However, I think maybe the world is again for a surprise, and that is what is a big problem, because the kind of arsenal and the variety of arsenal which is being produced from the long-range artillery, the quantum, as General Saxena is talking about, and the strategy of application of these arrays of different systems that you have, how you can neutralize or allow the enemy to continue to fire at something which is dud. Demonstrate the actual effectiveness, one, and once that kind of a technological demonstration or the deterrence has been established, then fire so many more missiles which actually do not possess that kind of a nuclear or a conventional warhead, and let the ballistic missile defense of that country exhaust to a point. And then you say, hey, now that you've exhausted, I have got one, now actual thing is going to come. So really speaking, the combination of the cyber attacks, the space attacks, the drone attacks, the loitering ammunition, there is going to be so much of it flying, and so much of it is going to be autonomously flying, that it is going to be extremely difficult for a human to react to it unless the human reaction is also autonomous in nature. So therefore, from the networked approach to system of systems, it is but important for us to go into mosaic warfare. And mosaic warfare is nothing but having a smaller
As in
tactical...
mosaic, as in MOSAIC, mosaic warfare.
Mosaic warfare.
Okay.
In mosaic warfare, you have to make sure that your tactical commander's responsibility and capability are matched with the technology that he has available to him, so that even if there is a command and control center which is ineffective or out of action for some time, the local commanders can continue to fight with that kind of a technological edge. So therefore, to make sure that we are not completely knocked out, when I say we, it doesn't mean India. I'm talking about just a warfighter strategist, that you are not completely knocked out. You have to make sure that the plethora and the variety of technology which is being put into play ultimately has to be put on one network of control, and human response may fail, and autonomous response will have to then continue to contribute to survival. And autonomous reaction of decision making not only will continue to give you a surviving ability, but also a second strike, because the human has failed. Then the autonomous machines should continue to work for some more time, till the time you can resurrect the ability of the human decision cycle to come back.
That's very interesting, General Pannu. If I can just come to you, Aditya, we were actually looking. We started off this conversation with the catastrophic sort of blind spot that Israel had over Hamas on October 7th. I mean, do you feel that when you look back, when you look back at the the last couple of months, do you feel that we in India also have a blind spot where, let's say, Pakistan's concerned? Because we've now downplayed Pakistan and said it's not a threat at all. But it was a very hot product till very recently.
Sure, yeah. I mean, look, strategic surprise is a fact of life. Independent India has experienced it twice in 1962 with baleful consequences. In 1999 as well. We don't think of it as such a big strategic surprise because India sort of managed to deal with the situation there. But really, these are big surprises that India has faced, and they won't be the last. And often, the threats will come from areas you don't expect. And so, yeah, yes, you absolutely could have something happen in Pakistan. It could happen from, direct attacks by the Pakistani state, non-state actors most likely supported by the state, and so on. And since what we're talking about here is, basically aerial threats, I think that's sometimes underappreciated.
No, and the fear that has always been there when we look at the non-state actors in Pakistan having access to nuclear weapons. I mean, there was always that sort of bogey that was raised. I mean, real or imagined, I don't know. But I also had a very interesting remark made to me about China, which basically said that China's missile and drone technology was mainly copied and appropriated from the West, and that its efficacy has never been demonstrated in a war or a conflict, unlike Israeli and American weaponry. So the world is yet to see if the weapons sold by China is war worthy, which I found quite intriguing, that comment. So I'm running out of time, so I would like to go to each one of you and get your concluding remarks.
You must have read the news sometime back when Xi Jinping sacked. He's on a sacking spree of his generals, and a lot of generals have been sacked. And
That's right.
of the charges,
That's right.
one of the charges, there is in the missile, instead of propellant, the water was supposed to be filled. Water was found to be filled,
Yeah.
and but jokes aside, let us not underestimate your potential adversary even for once. Now, the
Mm.
Chinese ballistic missile defense program may have had their beginning in the Russians when the 1955 or 56 they gave them their first missile called Sibling, SS-2 Sibling. From there they started their or East Wing, and let us not say that these missiles are not worth their salt. We will do well to remember that they are a military power to reckon with. And as Gen Pannu was saying, that their space capability, we have covered only half the story. That's only the deliverable, that's only the missile. They have a tranche of 11 to 33 satellites, which are basically required for carrying out the global look-see, command, control, and BMC2 of their ballistic missile system, which is a separate chapter by itself, and they also have their command and control in place. We will only, it foolhardy remark to say that, oh, they're nothing, their missiles are nothing, there'll be cheap system which will fail in war. Sorry. Let us never underestimate our potential adversary and prepare for the worst. Yes, I always say it is not that tomorrow the DF-41 or DF-31 will get launched. We may not be at the crosswires as of now. The arms race is between the first and the second economy of the world, and the arms rivalry is going. But at the same time, let us not forget that the hypersonic capability which is being demonstrated will become operational very fast, and we need to catch up. It is not that tomorrow we require a counter hypersonic, but day after tomorrow, of course, we will require. If you want to, you use the word impregnable, if you want any degree of deterrence, any degree of surety of your missile defense, you might as well not underestimate or play down your adversary. That's what my...
Beautifully put. That's beautifully put. General Pannu, concluding remarks?
Neena, in the initial conversation, you had spoken about the multi-domain warfare.
Yes.
Really speaking, multi-domain warfare covers 5 or 6 elements, and I'm talking about 5 to 6 elements for the simple reason that Army, Navy, Air Force, cyberspace make it 5. And then, of course, the 6th one can get added with a couple of more variables. Some of it would get covered by the military industrial complex that you have will contribute to all this. Now, the multi-domain warfare ultimately will make sure that your success lies in putting all these things together as one monolithic command and control structure. Now, General Saxena had spoken about a terminology called operationalization. And you had just mentioned that the China's war machinery has not been tested. Now, this is a threat for India for the simple reason when the industrial complex starts manufacturing huge amount of military technology-based equipment, can continue to do what it does in labs or on the test ranges, but has not actually fought a war. America has always sought a battlefield to test and offload their arsenal.
Oh,
As a result,
that's interesting.
as a result, when you pick wars away from your homeland, you are actually looking at how you discharge and how you are giving a cyclic experience and feedback to your own industry and capability development to perform better. The Chinese should not land up creating a situation of war where they would land up offloading their arsenal only for test bed. So as a result, India should not allow that opportunity for China to use some of its technology as a trial on a test bed. As a result, today, what are the 2 strategic arcs that the China is looking at? Only one is the South China Sea, East China Sea combination of Taiwan. And the second strategic arc or the strategic direction is India.
Yes.
And the South China Sea analogy is directly between China and America. And Japan, of course, that side. But as far as India is concerned, the others are little away from India because it is only the Indo-Pacific where the Americans step in.
Yes.
And if that is where we are going, then you find that if you realize that 2 superpowers never fight directly with one another, they always fight through a medium.
Proxies. Yes, yes.
The Russians and the Americans are fighting in Syria. Both are discharging their own technology onto certain way, but not directly fighting with one another. Similarly, the East and the Western Bloc, to put it in better words, the East and the West Bloc are displaying the demonstration of capability in Ukraine. Now they have gone into Israel and West Asia. And today the Americans have taken a decision that they would do war aid with funding for Ukraine, Israel, and together. Now imagine Americans are putting 3 areas of conflict on one plane. So if they are looking at supporting a war effort to start with economy, trade, technology, and then to military, so it means we are already mentally headed towards a 3rd World War. Because this kind of expansion of conflict has not been seen after 2nd World War. The way the arc of violence is increasing. So earlier it was far away from India. Then it opened up in West Asia, far away from India, now coming closer to India and Iran. And then if you go on the other side, and today as they're talking about supporting Taiwan into it, now why are they, Americans, adding Taiwan to it is basically trying to give a binary stretch to the Chinese that will look east and look west, both sides we are going to give support. But unfortunately, this is how the Chinese are also looking at having their own arc of violence with China, Pakistan, North Korea, and Russia at the back. So I think we are headed into a huge mess where the trade technology and the business of warfare is going to unfold in a manner that we have to be really very, very careful and very smart to make sure that we don't get into these crosshairs, yet prepare for it.
That's beautifully put, General Pannu. Thank you very much. Aditya Ramanathan, your concluding remarks, please.
Sure. Just to draw on what General Saxena said, look, deterrence is, you can only deter when your adversary knows your capabilities. And so with something like nuclear weapons, the Chinese are going to make damn well sure that everybody knows their missiles work. So they're going to do that. So they know this is bad. Okay, I'll just one last thought. What General Pannu said. So I mean, countries are going to, like China, are going to use other conflicts as testbed. They've already done that with some uncrewed combat aircraft. With the war in Yemen. They sold those weapons to the UAE. And this is really like a history that goes back all the way, to the Korean War, the Vietnam War, 1973 Yom Kippur War. The US and the Soviets kept using these wars as test beds to develop better weapons, to develop countermeasures, and that affected their own war plans and the way they thought about how they would actually fight each other. So this is something that China is going to attempt to do, and we have to be aware of that and see what we can do to stop it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Aditya Ramanathan. Thank you, General Saxena, and thank you, General Pannu, for being a part of this fantastically interesting discussion, which I think rarely gets talked about, which is India's, so-called, and our defense capability and our attack capability. Thank you very much. Thank you, viewers. Please do click on the new Indian Express web edition and the Global Express icon and share it with your friends and colleagues. Thank you again.